Okay, we're solving more equations from Chapter 2. We're on Section 2.2, Part 1, to solve each equation and then check each solution. So, number 6, we have 2/3 x plus 6 equals 4. So, the usual way to do this, if it was 2x plus 6 equals 4, you'd subtract 6. You do the same step. You're going to subtract 6 from both sides. And that'll give me 2/3 x on the left side, and then 4 minus 6 is 4 plus negative 6 or negative 2. Now, there are a few ways to go from here. Probably the most efficient way to do this is multiply both sides by the reciprocal, 2/3. That way we'll have 1x. So we take the reciprocal and multiply it. So that these cancel. The 3's cancel, the 2's cancel, which is what I want. I want just 1x. And over here we have a negative times a positive. And let's see, the 2's cancel, right? So you will just have negative 3. So it looks like the answer is negative 3. And if you were to write this as a solution set, after we check it, we'll know for sure. If it checks, the answer is negative 3. So let's go over here and check it. We have 2/3 times negative 3. Now, I'm going to go ahead and write as negative 3 over 1. You don't have to do that, but it's easier to see what's in the numerator and denominator that way. And we're going to just do order of operations first on the left-hand side. So I do my multiplication first, and when you multiply fractions, you cancel. Also, notice I have a positive times a negative, so the answer is negative. And the 3's cancel, so I'm just going to get negative 2 plus 6. If you cancel those 3's. And so negative 2 plus 6 is 4. Because you have more positives than negatives. All right, so we've simplified the left-hand side. Now we simplify the right-hand side. It's also 4. So it checks. So our solution of negative 3 is correct. We're going to solve this equation using another method, where if you multiply both sides of the equation by the least common denominator, you'll eliminate all the fractions. So there's only one fraction, 2/3, so the denominator is 3, so that's the least common denominator. So you're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 3. You can write this as 3 times 2/3 x plus 6 on the left-hand side and multiply it by 3 times 4 on the other side. I sometimes do a little shortcut. I just put a 3 and put a parentheses around all of it and remember to multiply 3 times all the different terms. But you should get the same thing. No matter which way you're looking at this, you're going to multiply 3 times the 2/3 x, the 3 times the 6, and the 3 times the 4. Same thing, 3 times the 2/3 x, 3 times the 6, and 3 times the 4. So let's do that. We have 3 times 2/3 x plus 3 times 6 equals 3 times 4. And note, the reason we do this is so that the 3's cancel. So I've got 2x plus 18 equals 12. All right, now we have an equation without fractions, which a lot of people find simpler. So I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides so that I have just the variable on one side of the equation, the 2x. And I've got 12 minus 18. Remember, you're adding a positive and a negative here. The negatives outweigh the positives. So that's a negative 6. And then you'll divide both sides by 2 to isolate the x. And we will end up with x equals 3, which is what we got using the first method. The check will look exactly the same. But here's another way of getting the solution of 3. Okay, so this is just an alternative method to eliminate fractions. Okay. Number 7, 1.4x equals negative 56. Now, you could simply divide by 1.4, use a calculator, do long division. So that's one way of doing this. But you do have to be very careful when you're dividing with fractions. So you would have negative 56 divided by 1.4. The answer is going to be negative. You can put that in your calculator and see what you get. Now, I don't always have a calculator in hand, so another way of doing it is you could multiply the top and bottom by 10. Top and bottom by 10 here. Or you could have done that in the first place, multiply both sides of the equation by 10. And now I really have negative 56 times 10 over, what happens is the denominator now becomes 14. It's easier. So if I do negative 56 times 10 over 14, it's just a little bit easier to cancel. With whole numbers, 14 into 56 goes 4 times. So I have negative 4 times 10. And say I didn't have my calculator with me, and that's how I get the answer. X equals negative 40. You do have to be careful in case it doesn't go in evenly with calculators, though. So if it did not go in evenly, you would have to write it as in a fraction. But reduce it. You never leave decimals and fractions mixed together. All right, let's check this. So we've got 1.4 times negative 40. All right, so one way of doing that, again, is by putting it in your calculator. Another way to do it is you say, well, you have a positive times a negative, so the answer is negative. And then you just do 14 times 40, which is 560. 14 times 40, I'm going to show you what I'm doing. 14 times 40, so I'm ignoring the decimal, in other words, is 560, but it was really 1.4, so you have to move the decimal in for the answer, one place. So this is going to be negative 56, and on the right-hand side, it's also negative 56. So that checks. Negative 40 is the correct answer, which, if you wrote using solution sets, it would be written like this. Number 8. We have variables on both sides of the equation and constants on both sides of the equation, so we want to put the variables on one side and the constants on the other side. All right, we've got a positive 2x on the left and a negative 2x on the right, so I'm going to keep it on the left-hand side, so I'm going to have a positive number in front of the variable. So I want to add 2x to both sides so that this negative 2x is not going to be on the right-hand side of the equation. It's always going to be the opposite sign if all of a sudden it ends up on the other side. Now, since I'm going to have 4x on this side, right, I don't want to have minus 4, so I need to also get rid of the minus 4, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I'm putting it under its like term, notice, to make it simpler. So negative 2x plus 2x, this cancels out, you get a 0, and negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6. So wow, I'm going to get a fraction. You can do fractions. Divide by 4. So x equals negative 3/4. I'm sorry, negative 3/2. All right, well, we can check it. It's not going to be so bad. So we're going to put in, and notice you could write negative 1.5, but it's easier to leave it as is. So I have 2 times negative 3/2 minus 4. Now, remember we're doing the order of operations, so I want to cancel the 2's, right? And that'll give me negative 3 minus 4, or negative 3 plus negative 4. That's going to give you negative 7. Remember, you just simplify one side at a time using order of operations. Okay, on the other side, let's do negative 2 times negative 3/2 minus 10. Now this time the 2's cancel as well. How convenient. So this is going to be a negative times a negative, so that's going to be a positive 3 minus 10. And that's the same thing as 3 plus negative 10, which is also negative 7. All right. See, the check wasn't so bad because nicely the 2's cancel on both of them. If they don't, you deal with the fractions and you just get better at doing fractions. So the solution here is negative 3/2.